Massive worldwide chip shortage.
Earnings being cut by up to $2 billion.
We don't have these chips, we're in trouble.
Semiconductors, also known as microchips and integrated circuits, are essential components in every electronic product. And there is a global shortage of semiconductor chips, the electronic circuits that are integral to the function of the devices used in people's daily life, like phones, computers, television, gaming consoles, and cars. While the chips themselves are resilient, made to handle extreme temperature, vibration, and other external shocks, the global semiconductor supply chain is relatively fragile, prone to disruption from natural and man-made shocks. The supply of chips cannot be turned on and off with a switch. Multi-billion-dollar wafer fabrication plants are finely tuned and run 24/7, 365 days a year. Changing the production line for a new chip product can take weeks, if not months, and adding significant new wafer fabrication capacity can take years and billions of dollars. These chips are used for absolutely everything nowadays, from cars to cell phones to washing machines. This shortage will start to drive the cost of virtually everything up. In March, Ford announced that they are suspending some of their assembly plants and allowing thousands of new vehicles to sit on the line due to this shortage of semiconductors. It is estimated that this shortage could cost Ford up to $2.5 billion in sales. Ford has announced that its Edge sport utility vehicle and its F-150 truck will be forced to sit at Louisville, Kentucky plant for weeks because they cannot finish building these vehicles and forcing them to cut the shifts of their employees. Samsung, Honda, and Volkswagen are also being severely hurt by this shortage and now warning of disruptions in the supply chain. Honda has suspended production and has warned that all of their plants in the United States will feel the impact of this shortage. Volkswagen CEO Herbert Diess said that he doesn't see the problem easing up anytime soon and is expecting things to get worse before they get better. Car makers aren't the only companies that are going to suffer from this semiconductor shortage. Almost everything you buy has these chips in them or are somehow going to be affected by these chips, whether directly or indirectly. You are going to start seeing widespread shortages in almost everything, from cars to electronics to medical devices. If you are interested in gaming, you may have witnessed the effect of the shortage firsthand. Sony has directly pointed towards the chip shortage as the reason to why there are millions of people who want to get a PlayStation 5 but are unable to do so. PlayStation 5 consoles are often out of stock for days or even weeks at retailers, only to be sold out nearly instantaneously as soon as they are restocked. This shortage has already affected Apple. Apple is the biggest buyer of these chips. They had to delay the launch of their iPhone 12 by 2 months last year due to these chip shortages. They are now also expecting more issues with their production line due to Samsung Texas plant being closed since February 16 due to the winter storm that hit them. This Texas plant produces 5% of the world's global chip production. Samsung is the second largest producer and buyer of these chips, and they have announced that they might have to postpone the launch of their next flagship smartphone due to this shortage. According to The Guardian, this chip shortage has reached a crisis point and that there is no sign of supply catching up or demand decreasing, while prices are rising across the chain. This will cross over to people in the street. Expect cars to cost more, phones to cost more. This year's iPhone is not going to be cheaper than last year. It looks like it's going to be a while before things even begin to return to normal. To get new complex semiconductor plants up and running, it can take up to 2 years, and that's just to get new plants up and running. It's likely going to take a few more years before they can get caught up with the orders. The COVID-19 pandemic had already put enormous pressure on supply chain, especially for consumer electronics like laptops, video game consoles, and smartphones, as it forced people around the world to find new ways to work and play. When the pandemic spread from China to Europe and the United States in the spring of 2020, car makers like General Motors, Ford Motors, and Volkswagen were forced to temporarily shut down production lines, anticipating a market slowdown that would last some months. They cancelled orders for chips used in cars' electronic systems like driver assistance and navigation control. Chip foundries like Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation or TSMC reassigned their pre-production capacity for the remainder of that year to companies making smartphones, laptops, and gaming devices, which were experiencing a surge in demand during the pandemic lockdown. Geopolitical factors also played a role. especially when the Trump administration began tightly regulating sales of semiconductors to Huawei Technologies, ZTE, and other Chinese firms. Those companies began stockpiling chips essential to 5G smartphones and other products. At the same time, American firms were cut off from chips made by China's Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation after the United States federal government blacklisted the firm. When the car sales bounced back faster than expected in the third quarter of last year and car makers tried to ramp up production again, chip factories could not respond fast enough, given the long lead time needed to schedule orders. The automotive industry is experiencing another critical market shift that has important supply chain implications. As car makers increasingly prioritize electric vehicles, cars are becoming electronic devices. This means the automotive industry now must face the competing demands of all other industries, including those in electronics and those adding internet connectivity to the product. In July of last year, a fire at a Japanese factory cut off supplies of special fiberglass used for printed circuit boards. Then, in October, another fire at a Japanese plant belonging to Asahi Kasei Macro Devices took advanced sensing devices used in automotive and other industries out of circulation. The dearth of semiconductors then quickly spilled over to other industries, such as consumer electronics and home appliances, which saw a spike in sales from the pandemic's stay-at-home effect, but suddenly found themselves unable to secure adequate supplies to meet the increased demand. The chip industry, which operates on a just-in-time model, is periodically hit with shortages triggered by natural disasters or man-made events. The last time a similar supply chain shock hit car makers was 10 years ago, when the Fukushima earthquake damaged water fab operations at Renesas Electronics, the number 3 supplier of car chips. In the summer of 1997, an unusual phenomena triggered a global shortage of chips. That was when the Tamagotchi Digital Pet, a keychain computing device made by Japanese firm Bandai, became a smash hit among young people around the world. The huge and sudden demand for the X-shaped gadget soaked up semiconductor capacity in Taiwan, which triggered shortages and delays that spilled over to the other sectors. The car industry was the first to be hit, with car makers like General Motors, Ford, and Volkswagen warning that the situation would affect sales and production output this year. The unavailability of chips would impact the production of 1.3 million cars and vans globally in the first quarter this year, according to the research firm ISH Market. Last month, the UK car maker Mini said it suspended a production line for 3 days because of scarcity of chips, while Ford recently warned that the shortfall would cut its output by 1.1 million vehicles this year. Apple reported last month that the shortage will incur a loss of $3 billion to $4 billion in its financial third quarter to June, with the biggest impact felt on Mac and iPad products. Bloomberg later reported that deliveries of the new high-end iPad Pros were slipping to July on strong work-from-home demand as well as component shortages. The chip shortage looks set to persist for some time yet. It can take up to 2 years to get complex semiconductor production factories up and running, and manufacturers are in the process of significantly raising prices for the second time in less than a year. As recently reported by Reuters, automakers and medical device manufacturers have asked the Biden administration to subsidize construction of new US semiconductor manufacturing capacity.
We need to stop playing catch-up after the supply chain crisis hit. We need to prevent the supply chain crisis from hitting in the first place. And in some cases, building resilience will mean increasing our production of certain types of elements here at home. In others, will mean working more closely with our trusted friends and partners, nations that share our values, so that our supply chains can't be used against us as leverage.
And in response to the shortages, TSMC, the world's largest semiconductor manufacturer, has increased its 2021 capital spending budget to $28 billion. But funding and building a new semiconductor fab is at least a 5-year process. The pandemic and the chip shortage have made one thing abundantly clear. A flexible, agile supply chain is crucial to navigating the changes and staying resilient. If you liked what you saw in this video, please do not forget to share and subscribe. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you in the next episode.